Look, let's just talk about the outlook for next year, because I feel like the $1 million, I should say maybe even the $1 trillion question, is whether the Trump administration is actually going to be successful at boosting oil and gas production. Trump has talked about it, so has Scott Bessent, so has Chris Wright. All of these names are going to be part of the team if they do get nominated and secure the positions. But how successful do you think the Trump administration actually will be?
I think obviously they will increase the production in the sense of increase the availability of permits for people to drill for oil and gas. I think what people do not know is that the E&P companies are very disciplined today for the cash flow.
Yeah.
So it is not that they will the production will increase dramatically, but definitely it will be positive for a lot of the companies to drill for oil and gas, and obviously the permits is going to be more allowed for the gas. And I think what you're going to see is improvement of the gas, and most probably the LNG export is going to be open up, which means that a lot of people will drill for gas more than oil.
Yeah.
But oil is always going to be concerned for the E&P companies for the cash flow, because investor wants to see return of free cash flow.
Yeah, and that's the sort of the messaging that I've been hearing from other people in the industry as well. They say that right now the focus has actually shifted to cost discipline, to returns to shareholders, and therefore, yes, it may be easier to get permits to drill, but in reality, it's going to be the numbers and the financials that dictates what they end up doing.
Absolutely right.
Yeah. What about regulations? And again, we talk about the potential to deregulate or perhaps introduce looser regulations on that front. How is that likely to impact the landscape?
I'm sure it is not going to be, I would say, loose, but I'm sure it's going to be easier. Right? Easier for, as I said, permits, for some of the regulation of the emission. Definitely there will be more pro-frack, more fracking availability for some of the states, which means that the availability, again, of the E&P companies to get permits on some of the lands that were not accessible will be easier.
One thing somebody told me is that it's actually some of the very large integrated oil companies that have benefited from some of the IRA tax incentives and benefits that are offered. And therefore, if they are taken away, the sector that is set to benefit the most are actually the smaller companies, not the large IOCs.
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at the states itself, the blue states are the one that used the most IRA. So actually Texas, for example, benefited the most. So, and the IRA will not go away.
The red states, you mean?
Yes, red states, sorry.
Yeah.
So the IRA is not going to go away.
Yeah.
It's just going to be some of the, I would say, the hydrogen and some of that kind of very big subsidies. I think this is what's going to scale down.
Yeah. What does all of this do to the oil complex next year? I feel as though there's a lot of bearishness when you look out to 2025 about where the price of oil is headed. We're sitting in a region where people care a lot about where oil trades. How do you see it panning out next year?
I think the OPEC will be disciplined in regulating that. For the, I would say, the excess capacity in the market. The U.S. is not going to increase by a couple of million barrels, so it's not the same. And obviously, the big question mark always remain about the sanctions and how much Iranian oil will be available. Obviously, Trump speaks a lot about it's going to go back to less than 500,000 barrels available to export. Is this the truth or not? All this, I think, is a lot of question mark. But definitely is the China growth is the bigger question mark, and what does that do to demand? But people here invest for the long term. It's not like every 6 months. And the long term is very positive for oil.
One of the stories that we're going to talk about actually in the segment after you is I'm going to be speaking to my colleagues about the pickup in deal making. And a lot of the deal making is coming on the back of some of these state-owned oil companies selling off businesses, divesting, doing spin-offs, ADNOC, making acquisitions abroad. And I wonder whether you see that as opening up opportunities in this part of the world.
I think this part of the world is as I said, is a very long term. There is a lot of idea that, as we did, for example, that we are the first company to be publicly listed on NASDAQ. A lot of people want to invest here. They don't have access, or they want to enlarge. And you can do vice versa. So a lot of the companies can invest outside and then maybe IPO here, or maybe start to do a list between the exchanges. I mean, again, here is a long term. is the lowest cost per barrel produced. Nobody produced below $10 per barrel. US is 35 to 50. So this is a very long term. And again, the world needs a lot of energy.
Yeah.
Don't forget that we still use 250 million barrel equivalent per day.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Let me just round up the discussion and asking you about an op-ed that you penned recently, talking about how the energy industry needs to be part of the discussion around the transition. Some people would think that that's perhaps paradoxical, right? Because the energy industry is responsible for so much of the emissions in the world today. How do you see the energy sector's role? And then also, how do you see the Trump administration coming in, derailing some of the path towards this climate agenda?
No, I think the energy industry has the infrastructure, has the means, has the know-how, has the ecosystem to make the transition happen. What you need to do is you need to just reduce dramatically the emission. So routine flaring, you need to stop. Water recycle, you need to be 100%. You should not use water from outside sources. You use internally your water. And all this will dramatically reduce emission. And then you remove the coal, replace it with gas, which is exactly what the US did, right? That's why the US has the best emission year-on-year difference. It's just purely stop coal, use gas, right? So everybody, we still use equivalent of 60 million coal barrel. So this has to stop, and you convert. And then while you're increasing your renewable, increasing your solar, your wind, a lot of hybrid, a lot of basically solar with, instead of batteries, use gas, et cetera, et cetera. And in that case, this is what will reduce dramatically the emission. I don't think Trump will change a lot of things as people think, right? Yeah. He is not going to go crazy on, the IRA is good. It just, as I said, the stuff that is subsidized dramatically, he's going to scale it down.